My guest is a comedian, actress, and writer. She's a special on YouTube titled Whiskey Fist and recently was featured in Rolling Stone Magazine. She's also the co-host of the Find Your Beach podcast with comedian and her husband, Andy Haynes. I'm excited to welcome Rosebud Baker.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. We worked together on New Year's at Laughs in Seattle, which is my home club. Shout out to Laughs as we're starting here because we wouldn't have had that. It's fun. New Year. I wanted to ask you about this because New Year's is kind of notorious in comedy as being like kind of a hell gig. What do you think of it?
I love performing on New Year's, just because it's like a little bit of for me, I like to start the new year off doing something that I love, or something that has to do with my goals for the year. And so doing stand up on New Year's, even if it's a shitty gig, I still feel like I did what I wanted to do. Like I rang in the new year doing what I wanted to do.
For sure.
So yeah, I always kind of
as think of close to a running start as you can get for the new year for you. Like that's I mean, you're literally doing what you want to do into the new year. So
yeah, I think of it like that. I mean, it's always a hell gig, but it's like I felt like this year the people that came out for New Year's, they had to be fucking comedy fans because it was like Omicron. I don't even know how to Omarion, whatever the fuck people are calling it. They might as well rename it Omarion, to be honest. But they really wanted to be out, you know? So
they were some of the best. Like I've done New Year's for the past 3 years, and I like purposely do it because just like being sober, I never know what to do with myself on New Year's. Like I don't want to go out to the bars, and I don't really like being around tons of people that are drunk. So like house parties are kind of weird too.
Yeah.
So it's like a good, healthy distraction. And most of the time people don't want to work it. So it's like, there's extra gigs and like stage time. And it pushes you a little bit because those audiences you only see them once a year. Like they're very
strange. It's a St. Patrick's Day audience in the middle of the winter. You know,
sure.
Like, I mean, I guess you could argue that St. Patrick's Day is the winter, but not really.
Yeah.
It's like we're all expecting spring.
So I wanted to say, when I met you, this wasn't the first time I met you. I had met you the last time you'd come through Laughs, and I don't think we had talked at all. And I'm a pretty shy person. Like I'm standoffish, and I was really intimidated by you. Like, I don't know why. I think like your voice and like your stature, like you have a very maternal presence too. And it's like, you're shifty, kind of like you move quickly and stuff. And I was like, I just didn't want to, you never know with headliners when you're working with them. Like, I don't ever want to be in the way, like I don't want to upset anybody. And I was taken back, like hanging out with you. Like you are one of the nicest people I've met in comedy. And
really?
Oh, for sure. It was one of my favorite. And I've worked with Andy a handful of times, and like I don't know, both you guys are so much fun. Like I would really recommend any comedy fans I working that whole weekend with you guys. I had a blast.
That was a really fun weekend. Yeah. It's so funny that you say that you were intimidated by me. I mean, I get it with the voice. I think I've noticed that people sort of tend to approach me like a dog that they know bites, but they don't know why it bites.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I understand why they feel that way, because I do have that vibe of somebody that could, like, at any point just sort of like snap on someone. And I think that's a real East Coast thing.
For sure.
Like,
I'm used to it, kind of, like, because I'm from Vermont originally, and we lived in Massachusetts and New York and shit. But I just on the West Coast, you don't see it that much. So it's
Right.
such a different change of pace from what you're
Yeah.
used to. But
Yeah.
it I don't know. I definitely enjoyed working with you guys. Was that like the start of your tour, or was that just like
No, that
working
was
out
just like
stuff
a one-off
before?
gig. We had made the plan to do that. I think last time I came to Seattle was with Andy over Christmas or maybe it was March. I don't remember, but it was in the middle of the pandemic. He had a gig at Laughs and we were going to visit his mom. And while we were there, they were like, "Why don't you guys come for New Year's?" And I thought, "Yeah, let's do it." It was like so far away that I was like, "Sure." I mean, I don't even know if comedy is still going to be a job then.
Yeah,
Let's let's say yes and see what happens. And that's sort of how it came about.
sure. And
But
are you on
and
tour now? Are you like,
now
has it
I'm
started
not
or
on tour
what's?
now. I'm starting my tour. I mean, I would literally have to check my own website to know the date, but I I believe end of February, early March is when the tour really kicks off. Um, and then I'm going to be on tour through the end of May. Um, there's like a couple, it's not every weekend, but there's probably like seven weekends in a row that I'm going out. So that's going to be, a lot physically.
How do you've done a fair amount of that before, right? Like it's
Not like this. I've never done uh you know, where I'm preparing to do my own hour. Like I've been on tour with other comics, but that's featuring is like the sweetest gig in comedy. Like
yeah,
it's just the best fucking gig. You go up, you do 15 minutes, you know, of your best material, you crush because it's all your A material. And then you just don't work for the rest of the night. I mean, it's just, and the audience comes up and they're like, "Oh my God, I loved you so much more." You know what I mean? Like you've got like a couple audience members that are like, "It should have been you." So you just get these like compliments
that's a
that,
good feeling.
yeah, that they are just like, it's just the best fucking get. And especially if you are opening for somebody who's like big, because you're
Yeah,
just living their life for
yeah,
a second. And you have to be careful because we are delusional people as comedians. And I'm seeing this a lot where people are featuring, but they're posting other people's dates as like their tour. You know what I mean? And that's where it gets tricky because you're like, you never want to be. I mean, that's like a fear of mine is a comic that's delusional about how far they are in the industry.
oh for sure.
Um, where you see somebody just like they're like, "I'm going on the road," and it's like, no, like no, somebody like
They're
Amy
taking
Schumer's
you on.
going on the road. You know what I mean? Like you're going with Amy. Like that makes me crazy.
Sure.
Like,
It's
and
an
it's so easy
interesting
to pull off
dynamic.
now. Huh?
The I don't know, like the headliner feature dynamic, because I worked with Soder in Spokane, and then my friend John Gard opened for, like, he featured for Pablo Francisco on the road for like years in that like heyday time for
Yeah.
Pablo. And those relationships, like they're it's an interesting dynamic how they interact, because sometimes like the headliner really relies on the feature and
Yeah.
vice versa. Like it's more than just like, oh, grab somebody and take them on the road. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Soderhead was talking about having Shane on the road with him for a really long time, and it really like got him a lot of experience. But like when you make that jump from feature to headliner, it's such a different game.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it like, how do you feel about doing that new hour like
It's
night
fucking
after night?
painful. It is so painful, dude. I'm like, I haven't been, you know, and I'm like ashamed to even say it because I feel like I should be further along than I am with how much time has passed since I recorded the special. Like I I've kind of been letting this hour just kind of come to me. I'm not really like uh normally I had a more like academic approach to comedy where I was like sitting down, writing, and the same way that someone who's like building a case would just sit down and fucking do the work. Like,
Yeah.
and this period of time, I don't quite know what it is that I want to be talking about. And everything that I am talking about feels like um I'm sort of in an existential crisis, you know, where I'm like, none of this means anything. What am I talking about? What's the point of this? And it's all self-doubt, and it's all like I'm truly like I have no confidence in myself. So it's painful. And
But it
I'm
sounds like that's exactly where you need to be to build a new hour. Like, because
yeah,
you use
yeah,
all those other things to get you that first hour, but now, like, you just can't approach it the same way. It's a different puzzle. And
yeah,
it's going to take all these weird chemicals and like feelings and all that to like start breaking it loose. But
yeah.
I mean, is there something you're trying to like? Because I watched your hour before this, and I watched like inside jokes too, and it was fun to just sort of like, you know, see all that, and then some of the material in that going into your hour. Like,
Right.
what do you like? I know you don't know what you're trying to do necessarily with this new hour, but is there like, do you have in your mind what you'd like for it to be different? Like what kind of like growth you would like to see, or
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because every time I think about what I want, I know it's going to end up something completely different anyway.
yeah.
But ideally, you know, when I watch myself as a comic, you know, when I watch even like Whiskey Fists and when I watch like Inside Jokes, which I haven't seen in years, but I remember watching that after it came out and being like, this looks like somebody who's like like I have jokes, but I'm still pretending to be a comic. Like I'm like up there just like doing a performance of a like I'm an actor pretending to be a stand-up. That's what it felt like when I watched it. And so I really want for this hour to be more myself. Like I want to just get more and more authentic with what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
Um I want to get comfortable with like I don't want to say silence, but I want to be able to sit in a moment that is uncomfortable without, you know, lashing out at an audience and being like, "You guys don't fucking get it," or like, I'm too fucking edgy for you." I don't want any of that. I want to be able to have a real um exchange with the audience. And that's kind of what it feels like I'm definitely having that. I just don't know if it's fucking funny. So like, you know, I'm talking about depression and what that feels like because I definitely got depressed um either during the pandemic or during or after my special came out. And so I'm talking about it
Mhm.
because when you're depressed, your life is very small and all you're really thinking about is like how you feel and how you can get out of it and what and then there's moments of depression that are really kind of freeing, you know, like I'll watch the news and like nothing hurts. I'll just watch the news and it's like
It's such a weird thing.
it
Like
doesn't even
major
bother me.
depression, it
What's
is
that?
like major depression. I mean, you went through, I don't want to like, you know, spill anything on what you went through personally, but like you had some big stuff going on in addition to the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
I it was like multiple miscarriages,
yeah, which one of
infertility.
those would be a
Yeah.
lot for most people. Like you say it so casually, like, yeah, a baker's dozen or whatever.
Dude,
Like,
yeah. I mean, it's like you this is the thing. Women who suffer from infertility or who deal with it, um, they like it gets to a point where I can have what's called a chemical pregnancy, which is basically like a fun-sized miscarriage. You know what I mean? Like it happens like the second you find out you're pregnant, you're getting your period and you're like, oh, another one, you know, like, and that's happened to me multiple times, even since I shot the special. So I'm just like, it feels a lot like the entertainment industry in that you build up a lot of hope and expectation, and then the next thing you know, well, that project's not happening.
You
So
said that on stage, that exact thing. Because
no, I
that's
haven't.
very, very funny, that analogy. Like it, and it's
it,
true. It is.
it
Like,
is. It is. It's that. And it's like I'm already in the entertainment industry. So now it's like to have it happening in my own fucking body.
yeah,
It just,
getting fucked
it's,
both ways.
I'm like, this is a nightmare. So I'm trying to talk through that. And in the meantime, I'm still going through it. So maybe it's not as funny right now because it's still fresh, but I don't know what else to talk about. You know, like this is where I'm at. A part of me wants to drop it all and do jokes about, you know, how my husband doesn't put the fucking toilet seat down and just hack it up for the next 10 years and
Yeah.
do shit that I know is going to like sell out. Um, because people are like, "Oh, that's refreshing and relatable," but that's not real and it's not what I'm going through. And the only thing that I really find the real shit funny. I find it funny. I'm the person that will laugh at a funeral. And that's the kind of stuff that I do on stage.
Well, this leads into one of my questions for you. So you do a fair amount of dark material, and if anybody watch your special, that's what it would be like labeled as or whatever. But
Right.
like a lot of comedians kind of stay away from material like that. They and this is I was having trouble like framing this question, so it's kind of just like a open dialogue here. But like when those jokes don't work, it feels like it's sort of this like arms cross, like you should have known to stay away from that, or like, you know,
Yeah.
that's what you get for doing that mentality. And at least my experience, because I like dark comedy, I do some, like, you don't really know where the line is before bringing it on stage,
Yeah.
and you can't, like, I guess in your opinion, is there any other way to, besides to like bring it up there and see what happens, or like, or how do you vet stuff ahead of time, or is it just sort of like you go with it? And because when it bombs, like it is earth shattering bombs, like it's,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it hurts for sure. But sometimes I don't like, sometimes stuff that I think is really offensive isn't offensive at all to people. Like, have you had
Yeah.
that experience too, where
Um I mean, I've had some experience with where I don't know that I've found stuff that I thought would be offensive not be offensive to people, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. But I've definitely had the experience where I start talking and they're like, no, like, don't, please don't, you know? And I want to be, this is one of the things that I'm trying to get better at is like knowing that, like, okay, I know, like, I want them to know that I know that it's hard to talk about this. I know that you don't want to hear, but to keep going with the joke anyway.
yeah,
And that's something I'm really struggling with on stage is like some nights, and I really got to get the fuck over this because I got this tour coming up and I got to get this shit out. But I'm chickening out a little bit because with the miscarriage stuff, that is something that people just do not fucking talk about. Like, they don't want to talk about it.
mhm,
It's too complicated. There's too many feelings. they're like, absolutely not. We will not joke about that. But then they'll talk about abortion. And, we've just gotten to this point where it's like everybody's going to laugh at abortion, right? But then they get so fucking upset when you bring up the fact that, like, it is a life, they get, and it's like, you got to know, like, because miscarriage is the other side of that, where it's like, I mean, one thing is like, I got mine for free, but the other side of it is like, it's a life. It is a live thing.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be reminded of that. So you kind of have to get through that first, which is like, like, it's funny. Everybody says they love a dead baby joke. I'm like, well, this is a fucking whole bunch of dead baby jokes.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, I mean, I've like referred to my pussy as like John Wayne Gacy's basement. Like, there's a lot of dead kids in there. You know what I mean? And like, they will not go there. They just won't. They're like, fuck that. And I want to be like, I know.
Why don't you though? Like,
what do you mean?
Just like state the obvious, be frank, like, and bring it down to more of a personal level where like, that's just because I guess when it's like, there's that much division.
Yeah.
It just makes sense to me. The only way you can go is inside, like,
right.
And whether or not they like agree with your point of view on it, you don't really give it. I mean, it's your experience. They can't take that experience from you. Like,
yeah, I think part of it is having faith in the jokes themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that like I've always leaned on is like, I'm like, there's a joke at the end of this.
Yeah.
With this, I don't know how many of these are jokes. I don't know how many of these are jokes, and I don't know how many of these are like things that I find funny, but they're not jokes. They're kind of observations. And so at the end of the day, I think two things are happening, which is that I'm not as confident in the writing, but on the other hand, I'm not hiding behind joke structure,
Mm-hmm.
Where because that can happen. You can write a joke and it can be a perfect joke, and you end up sharing this perfect joke, but you're not really sharing yourself. So there's that. I'm kind of like going between the two things and living in this place where I'm just too scared to go either way. One way is like going backwards, sort of. And the other way is like going more into an unknown place. But I think that I will get there. I know myself. I'll get there. It's just taking me a little longer than I want it to,
How many years in are you? Like,
I am, let's see. I started, I think I'm 9 or 10 years in.
because I heard Attell say something once where he's like, the first 7 years of comedy like are the best for material and the hardest for like writing and like creating that material.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next 7 years, you have all those skills to like craft the material, but you've limited so much of your life experiences because you're getting on stage every night and like not really living life the way that you were before, that like
Right.
what you have to draw from is substantially reduced. And like that seems like it might be playing a factor. I mean, you're right in that like in between time. And I don't know. I think you gotta,
that's
you got
actually
like a
that's the most,
manager and all that shit, but like, dude, it's hard. And
it's the most relatable thing I've heard. Actually, it's the most comforting thing I've heard in a long time, what Attell said. Because that's, I mean, when you don't really know what's happening, but then you hear something and you go, oh, that's what's happening.
yeah.
Like that. Whew. Yeah. Because my whole hour was about my life before comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, what am I going to write about my life in my like early 20s. Like, no, I got to write about my life now. And my life now is comedy and how it's like stolen my childbearing years.
Yeah.
Like, you know, um, so I really have to, but what's great about that is you got to dig a lot deeper.
Mhm.
You got to really get into what is underneath your motivation to do anything.
But
You
do you know what
have to know
sucks
your
about
own
that
voice.
too?
Hmm.
You have to dig a lot deeper. And I think that's what you're
Yeah.
doing right now. Like you're just like you're halfway through the digging. You're like, this fucking sucks. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what you're gonna get to, I guarantee you, like the pay dirt that you're gonna get to is gonna be like it's gonna be worth it. I mean,
Yeah.
and if
Yeah.
not, like, it's at
If
least know
not,
not to
I'm
go that
gonna,
way
if
again.
it doesn't work out, I'm just gonna fucking be an interior designer, like an interior decorator. That's basically that's what's gonna happen. Like, because it feels a lot like when you first get sober. And I make a lot of comparisons between sobriety and comedy in the
Mhm.
way that like you get to a place where you think I've got it all figured out and you always have to go back to basics.
Oh yeah.
And
That's
you know,
you like built in the segue for me. I was gonna bring up sobriety stuff. Like you said something to me which I thought was like a really interesting statement. I want you to elaborate on it. Like you mentioned like sober people do comedy differently.
mhm,
What did you mean by that? Because I got into comedy after I think like 8 years of being sober.
yeah.
And what do you mean by that? Because I definitely agree with that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, for one thing, we feel every failure. Like we feel every bomb. And not only that, but like we are sober for every set. So we don't have the benefit of getting on stage drunk and walking off stage with that confidence of like a drunk person where
Mhm.
it's like everything, I just fucking, I'm a god.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen for sober people. So I was talking to Shane last week. He was like, "Oh, I did a set that was sober." He was talking about how much it sucked, how lame it was compared to getting off stage drunk. And I was like, "Yeah, it sucks." It
Yeah.
I never think about how when people say to me, they're like, "Oh, you always say that you didn't do well," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know that." I'm always talking about what didn't go right because that's the part that I'm focused on
Mhm.
because I'm sober.
Yeah.
So, the same way that when you are living a sober life, you're constantly focused on getting better and growing and expanding. That um, that applies to comedy too.
Mhm.
So, sobriety and sober living is like you're always in a kind of a meditative state, and that's not to say that you are peaceful, but you are feeling everything. You
Oh,
have to go through everything. So I think that really affects your comedy because you're never riding on you can't ride a wave of confidence from one set to another. You're going to take one set, be like, that fucking sucked. Here's what I can fix. Here's what I can't fix yet. Here's something that I could improve. And that's how people who are sober do comedy. And it's not that makes it sound a little bit like we're better than other people.
let's just say it that way. It feels nice for this.
It makes it sound like that. I don't think it's necessarily true because we're not as good at having fun.
That's my next question. It was like, do you ever feel like you miss out on some aspects of the hang or like just I have trouble where it's like I'm almost always uncomfortable, like
Mhm.
just in life. And so like I'm this ball of like just like
Yeah.
I make jokes about it, but like I really am like pretty closed off, and I'm like I'm afraid of meeting new people and stuff. Like it's it's part of like some childhood trauma stuff or whatever. But like, do you do you feel like not being in the circle, like sharing the joint or drinking with everybody, like do you ever feel like you're missing out, or like you're not part of the group as a result of that?
I feel like no, I luckily I am so self-centered. I'm not really thinking about what other people are going through. You know, like I'm never really thinking about whether or not they're having a better time than me. Like um I do feel like I do feel like I have a superpower where I leave parties before they get shitty. Um, and that is nice. But I can't say that I would, that I like feel like I'm missing out on the hang because truthfully, like the hang, it's never that great. I'm never like, I came here to do comedy. I did it. And now I get to go home. Cause going home, that's the fucking hang. Like
Yeah.
I love being home and like watching TV and just chilling with Andy and staring at our dumb dog. And that's like, that makes me feel really happy. Um,
Also,
and when
the
I was,
hang is kind of like over time it loses its like when you start looking at it when people start getting older, it's like you're just
dude, it's sad.
it's yeah, no, it stops being fun. I mean, it's in a lot of it, like there's just a lot of substance abuse in entertainment in general. So it's like, I don't know. I see a lot
I
of
can't tell you
people.
how many conversations I've had with comics that like I thought we were vibing and then the next time I see them I have to tell them the same information about myself because they were drunk. I'm like why am I staying for this? Like
Yeah.
there's no I like what do I want to be remembered? I'm not going to be remembered by a person who's blacked out, you
Oh
know?
no. And I guess for me, like when I'm at those parties and stuff, it is kind of nice having been the person that was super blacked out,
Yeah.
like and like dealing with those situations now as someone that's not. It is nice to like sort of be the person that like makes sure someone gets home okay, or
Yeah.
doesn't fall asleep, like
Right.
head up and like gonna puke or whatever. Like it
Right.
I never would have expected that aspect of like quitting drinking, like to like being able to be of service, but like it's nice to hang out with your friends, let them get sloppy, but know that like there's someone there taking care of shit a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I I kind of like I gotta I could be better about that. I definitely like there's comics that are like a mess that I don't really like. I'll just let them do what they do. You
Yeah.
know, like I don't get involved. I don't try to like take care of them. I'm just like it's all you. You know what I mean? But that's all like other that's the other recovery program that I'm in where it's like you stop taking care of alcoholics,
Oh yeah.
which I needed help for.
Yeah.
Like because
Especially
I
when you're in the marriage that you're in too, and like there's a
yeah.
lot of there's a lot of levels to that.
Yeah, I mean, both of us are always so in our fucking feelings. It's just like everybody's got to take care of themselves because otherwise it gets to this place of like toxic. It's almost like we both have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility
Mhm.
for other people.
Yeah.
Um,
You sound
and
you
so,
sound like a mom, like on a field trip or something. That
yeah,
everybody's gonna take care of themselves.
yeah, like fucking get home, get in an Uber when you're supposed to. Good luck. Don't call me.
Yeah.
Like that's that's like where I'm at with it. There have been and it's like I'm a kind person, but I'm not a nice person. Meaning I will do something kind, but I'm not going to be nice about it.
Yeah.
Like I will let you know when you're overstepping.
Yeah.
And like even last night I was talking to a friend who's just like, she's so fucking upset about this guy who is a loser, an absolute loser, and has been a loser since they broke up, like multiple relationships that this man has been through. And she continues to worry that this is going to be the one where he marries her. And I'm like, this guy is broke. He hasn't had a job since you broke up. This is not going to work out. And I'm sick of you acting like it's going to, like he's found the one and they're going to live happily ever after and you're going to be alone. Like you are more surrounded by love alone in your apartment than this guy is with a harem of women.
Like you're being such a good friend, but the delivery of it is just so aggressive.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just like, let's fucking pick ourselves up and get over it. You know, I can't stand self-pity. It drives me crazy. It reminds me of the worst parts of myself. and, and that's really what it's all, why I hate it.
For
I'm like,
sure.
I got to stay away from that feeling, like, no matter what.
So this leads into the last thing I wanted to talk to you about before the story, but I read the Rolling Stone article, and congrats on, getting that. It was fucking rad. It was awesome to read it. And like you grew up in
Did you
like,
read the whole thing? I haven't read the whole thing.
yeah, I did.
I have not read the whole thing. I
But
read the first part of it and then I started freaking out about what my family was going to think. And then I just stopped reading it and I haven't gone back.
well, I grew up in a environment that wasn't completely that different than yours.
Oh, yeah.
Around a lot of like those country club type people. And my dad was the CEO of a company for 10 years. And like growing up in that type of setting, like, do you ever feel like you don't like belong in comedy because you haven't had the same types of experiences that other people had?
No, I feel like I don't belong in that. Like for as long as I can remember, my, the family and the environment that I grew up in, I felt like an outsider in my own family, which was a really strange thing
Mhm.
because ordinarily you're born into a family and all, and they, there's this sense of like, oh, wow, you are one of us. You know what I mean? But it was like I was born and then the job was to prove that I was one of them. Like, and that was something that was really unique to, I think is very unique to anyone who grows up in like with money
Mhm.
in like polite society. I'm putting that in quotes, but like where you're surrounded by like CEOs, politicians, lawyers, doctors, all of, people with a shitload of money who are, they're like trying to, um, your responsibility is to carry on the bloodline and the name.
Mhm.
And you didn't fucking ask for that. You were just born, you know? So I had my dad's side where that was really like, that was the focus, was impress us. And then I had my mom, who's an artist, who was a painter and, just had like a shitload of kids. And her main focus was just on being our mother because that was what she was comfortable with. Like she was like, I know she loved being a mom. Um, and I always felt like it was easier to be her daughter than it was to be my dad's daughter. And because I was already her daughter. There was something that felt like I had to prove that I was my dad's daughter, or I had to earn being his daughter, you know? And so I sort of just divorced myself from that responsibility, and getting into comedy and getting into entertainment. That was like, when I met comics, I felt the same way that I felt when I met other alcoholics. Like, these people are my people.
Mhm.
Even though we're all different, we all have, we're all honest. We all have a story to tell. Um, and we're all living our lives in a very authentic way. So that alone made me feel like, okay, I do belong here, even though my experiences are completely different from these people's. That is a benefit to me. Like,
And some comics too, like they're crazy smart. Like
yeah,
you come across like ridiculous IQ. Like I think it was in When Stand Up Stood Out, the documentary about like the Boston comedy scene. Someone said like the comics that came out through that time were either guys that dropped out of law school because they wanted to like do this thing,
right.
but like they could have gone that path,
Yeah,
or it was convicted felons that like
right.
got out of prison and wanted to do this thing. Both people were trying to impress their father. Like,
Yeah,
and I mean, I had everything you said. It's very relatable. I mean, it's I never felt like I fit in with those people. I never wanted to be there either. And
yeah,
there was like a I don't know, they suck. It's just so uncomfortable all the time. And it's like this weird, I don't
yeah.
get it. Like I never actually understood what the fuck was going on either. Like you're sitting at that party and I guess it's like one big competition over who has the most.
Yeah, that's what it is. And it's like the jealousy never ends and the competition never ends. And I mean, in a lot of ways I could be talking about stand up right now,
For sure.
um but it's like we take the wounds of our parents, and we evolve past them, but at the same time we recreate them in
Yeah.
our own way. And it was like, it kind of reminds me when you say like, oh, I never wanted to be there. Like, I feel that hard, because I did a joke about it in Whiskey Fist, where I was like talking about how you can't do anything cool with your family around. And that whole joke came from, I was reading like parts of the Bible. And there's this one part of the Bible where Jesus says to his followers, he's like, to love me, to follow me, you have to leave your family. And I read that and interpreted it to mean that when you have a calling that is true to your soul, you it has to come before everything.
Mhm.
That you follow that calling, even if it means you leave your family behind. Like, you have to evolve past your family. You have to leave that, because that's your origin story. It'll always be a part of you, but you can't. It's also why I didn't fucking finish reading the Rolling Stone article. I was like, this is just going to make me think about what they think.
Yeah.
So I won't read it, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, because I didn't do this for the fucking Rolling Stone article either.
Mhm.
So if all that does is make me think about whether or not they're going to approve, I can't read it, you know?
I do. I don't know. I grapple with that stuff a lot too.
Yeah.
And look, you're gonna piss some people off like
Yeah.
doing what we do. It's like it's sort of like the cost of doing business. A lot of people pissed you off doing the same, like
Yeah.
it's and doesn't mean that you don't love those people. And I mean, that's how I rationalize it. There's a lot worse shit I could be doing too. Like it's way worse stuff. And if this is like the worst, if getting on stage and telling some jokes that like are kind of upsetting,
Right.
I mean, compared to some of the things you did, which we're going to talk about now, like in terms of drinking, it's not that bad. But before we do, if anybody watching on YouTube has enjoyed this episode so far, please hit the like button and subscribe button for upcoming content. Hit the notifications bell in the top right corner, and that will alert you for anything new we dropped. And then if you can, throw a question or a comment in the comment dialog box. Doing all four of those things, or any four of them, but if you do all four, thank you, helps us with the YouTube algorithm, so we end up on the main page for new people to find us. But now we're going to do the story time segment.
It almost looks like we're in the same room right now, by the way.
It does.
It's story time. It's story time with Adam. Yeah, it's story time. It's story time with Adam and friends.
That is for a sexy story.
That is true.
That song is for a sexy fucking story. And this is not going to be sexy. I guarantee you that.
That's fine.
Okay. So lead me into this. You want me to tell a story about a time that I was drinking, right?
Yeah, I mean, I keep it pretty open for like the guests. So if you have a story that like you want to tell, it doesn't have to be drinking. It can be like anything, maybe that you're working out, kind of like
Right.
Dave Landau came on. He had something he had been working on for his book that he's working, and I don't like
something that basically a story from when I was drinking. I'd rather tell this story about that it was like happened a couple months ago where I was traveling with my dog on a plane. My dog's name is Mouse. She's like, you've met her. She's like 10 pounds. She's like a Chihuahua mix.
Yeah.
And she's a really odd dog. Like she's not trainable. Like I've tried training her. She doesn't follow the rules. Even the trainer was like, I've never seen a dog like this. I don't know if she's brave or terrified. And it sort of feels like she changes her mood a lot. And so she's very unpredictable. Like anything that you think she's going to do something totally different. So I took her on the road with me to San Diego. And I was like, she was really bad with potty training. And I was like, I'm going to take her on the road with me because I know my husband is just going to let her piss all over the house. So we're going to figure this out this weekend. I'm going to be on top of this. And when I'm not on stage, I'm going to be focused on where she's pissing and like, I'm just going to be taking her out constantly. So we did that. And she was great. She was really good. She did decide on this trip that she was going to not eat dog food. She was like, I don't eat dog food anymore. I eat people food. And so I would have to, she went on a hunger strike. And when I would go out to restaurants, I would order her like a little chicken and rice. And I would just put that on a little plate and put it under the table and she would eat people food. Okay. So I was like, this bitch is the most spoiled dog I've ever had. But whatever, she's doing what I came here to do and I'm proud of her and we'll leave it at that. So weekend ends. We had no accidents. She was perfect, but she hadn't gone to the bathroom the night before. And I was like, fuck, we got to get up early. We got to go to the airport. And while we're in the car on the way to the airport, she farted in the Uber. And it was so bad. It was so bad that like, if I had blamed it on her, it would have looked like it was me, you know? Because there's no way that a smell like that would have come from a dog her size.
Yeah.
So I had to apologize to the Uber driver. I was like, sorry, I like had Mexican food. I just started, because it wasn't, you can't deny that it was happening. Like it was like one of those things where we're in it together. It's like a body bleeding out next to you. You can't
the response of the driver.
He was like, oh, it's okay. And he like rolled down the windows. I was like, Jesus Christ. So we get to the airport. I was like, I got to walk this bitch around the airport so that she doesn't fart on the plane.
Oh man.
Like that, And so I'm like walking her around the airport, and we get into the plane, and I was like, this is fine. We'll get on the plane. We got 6 hours. So she's good. She's totally good. Like we're like 3 hours into the flight. She's totally fine. She's in her little like mesh crate, and about 3 hours in, I'm watching a movie, and the smell hits me, and it hits me and everyone at the same time. And it was the smell where it's like, that's shit. Like everyone turned around and they were like, that's not a fart. Like that's shit. You know what I mean? Because a fart will like crescendo. Like it'll like, there's like a build. You know what I mean? Where it's like you kind of smell it and you're like, Jesus. And then it dies out. A shit will hit you like a fucking freight train.
Yeah.
And
it keeps hitting you.
And it keeps hitting. It just keeps hitting. And it doesn't let up. So the second that it happened, people turned around in their seats. Like they were like they like turned around like I had kicked them in the back. And
in first class too.
This was not in first class.
Oh,
no,
that would have been so much better too.
No, it was in Comfort Plus, which is the poor man's first class. Yeah. So I grab the carrier and I run to the bathroom. I open it up. She is covered in shit. The carrier is covered in shit. And I'm talking diarrhea everywhere, all over it, in the mesh, all over her body, on the leash, on her bowl, on the fucking toys, and in the sheepskin blanket that's on the bottom, just everywhere.
Oh God, it just made me like shit.
I'm like, and I'm now I have the job of cleaning this up with no cleaning supplies in a bathroom that's the size of a fucking Kleenex box. And I was like, I should be able to throw my dog away. Like I should be able to put her in the toilet and flush her out the back of the plane.
This is the closest I've ever been to throwing up on this podcast.
It's just so like fucking gross. I'm telling you, I was dying. And I'm like, okay. So I grabbed, I was like, there's got to be Purell wipes. So I grabbed Purell wipes. I start wiping down the inside of the crate. I start shoving her shit covered belongings in the trash. And the trash can is like, you got to like, I had to like roll it up to like shove it down there. And then I had to like cover it with paper towels to like mitigate some of the smell. I'm trying not to get shit all over the fucking like in the sink, because the sink just fills up with water and then you got to like drain it out. So I was like, what the, and the water is there's not a lot of water. You got to keep in mind, you might as well be spitting on your fucking hand.
Yeah. You press it down and then 5 seconds later it stops.
I felt like how Puerto Rico must have felt when Trump threw paper towels at a hurricane. I was like, how the fuck what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
So I finally get all of this stuff cleaned up, right? I get everything in the trash can, everything else I flush down the toilet. And then I start cleaning her off. All right. I like start to be like, okay, I cleaned her off and I put her down and I'm getting everything ready to like go back out there. And all of a sudden I feel her little paws on my calf. And she was like, it was like I felt her say to me, I'm so sorry. I know you're busy, but there's more. And I looked down and she's shit all over the floor.
Oh
she has shit all over the floor of the bathroom. And I'm like, I was just like, Like, I did not know. So I grabbed more paper towels. I'm shoving those in the toilet because I don't want to leave them in the trash can because that's just going to be more shit smell. And I didn't know this. I didn't know you could actually clog a toilet, an airplane toilet with like that NASA suction that they have. You can clog those. I didn't know. So the toilet's fucking clogged. My dog is covered in shit. There's shit on the floor. I'm like, I have to leave the plane. I have to get out of the plane. This is the most traumatic shit. And in the middle of all of this, I'm thinking, do I really want to be a mother? Like, how do I? Because if this is a kid, you can't give the kid back. You know, I'm like, you should be able to. I should be able to get off the plane, explain to somebody what happened, and give them my dog. But so finally, I got it all cleaned up. I got the toilet situation fixed. I had to use my foot to like unclog the toilet. And finally I'm putting her back in her crate and I was like, oh, she's going to be uncomfortable. I like took my hoodie off, put my hoodie in there, which was brand new, and so that she would be comfortable, right? But then I come out of the bathroom and everybody's looking at me and I realize I'm wearing a completely different outfit. Like I took off the hoodie and now I'm in like a jumpsuit. And so I look like I changed clothes. Like it just looks like I shit myself.
Just shit up the bathroom.
And then brought my dog in with me. And it was the most embarrassing, horrific road story I've got, where it wasn't even on stage, but it's like the perfect experience of like what being on the road is, because you are in a place where you don't belong with none of the things that you need to survive. And I'm like, I would rather be on Naked and Afraid than be in this bathroom cleaning up my dog's shit ever again.
Just that fucking like, you need like the hottest shower after that experience to like the fact that how much more time
I had 3 hours left on this flight.
And did you just like, was it lingering on you? Like could you just smell yourself? I hate that feeling more, like just having this, even like food, like on your clothes or whatever the next day, but lingering.
I literally, I wanted to leave her on the plane when I got off. I wanted to leave her there. I was like, you don't belong with me anymore. I hate you.
Were you like texting like after it all happened? Like who was the first person you messaged or called?
Dude, I'm positive that I texted Andy. I'm positive I texted him. But everybody else, I was like, I can't begin to tell this story.
Just there's so many levels of that relationship you have to explain. There's
so many levels of nightmare that I just came out of. Like it sounded like something I would have dreamt up, you know, where you wake up from it and you're like, oh, thank God that didn't actually happen. But this happened, you know, this was like something I'm like, I have to carry this experience with me for the rest of I would have rather have shit myself. You know, I mean, this was like the week that it was trending that white people don't wash their legs on Twitter, you know, and that we're like disgusting. And I couldn't even, when the stewardess walked by, or the flight attendant, I couldn't even like touch her arm. I couldn't even be like, hey, I was like, I can't ask for anything else on this flight. I have to sit here and just be as invisible as I can be.
Disgusting white person.
This disgusting white bitch who just brought a shit covered chihuahua on this plane. I mean, if the airlines decide that dogs are never allowed on a plane again, I can't be one of the people who's like arguing about that. You know what I mean?
No.
I can't be like I couldn't even be like, oh yeah, no, I'm epileptic, and every time I'm about to have a seizure, she takes a shit all over herself. Like, I couldn't, there was no explanation where I could lie and get out of it, you know?
That was
But it
fucking
was
hilarious.
really, I can't, I hate to tell this story because I know it makes it harder for people who actually need to have their dog on a plane. But it's just like, I can't live with this alone, you know?
No, you need to keep telling that story. That's fucking hilarious.
I mean, I've tried telling it on stage. It's just so anticlimactic. Like
Well,
it
that
needs
last line is your button. Like, that's fucking funny.
You think so?
Hell yeah. I think a couple of the things we talked about today, you could throw in on stage.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, maybe.
comes out organically. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but before you take off, what can you plug for anybody listening or watching, like your just your social media stuff, your
Yeah.
podcasts and Patreon, all that?
Yeah. So I have a podcast with my husband called Find Your Beach. It was started on like the first day of the pandemic, and we got engaged by the third day of it. So it basically chronicles like the early stages of the pandemic and our being engaged and getting married and then settling into married life, and all the shit that we've dealt with ever since then. We have a Patreon for it. You can go to patreon.com/find your beach to support it. We also put our stand up on there. And I'm going on tour. My tour is called Your Mother's a Tour. And it's the dumbest tour name I could possibly think of. And you can find the tour dates for that on my website at rosebudbaker.com. Starts at the end of February, goes through May, and you can find me on social media at Rosebud Baker. Yeah.
Great. Thank you
Yeah.
for coming on. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
And
Yeah.
Thanks anybody for listening or watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to rate and review us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to hit the notifications bell so you find out about our upcoming content. Hit that like button, subscribe, and throw a comment in if you enjoyed this episode. As always, follow us on Instagram at FNF Pod. We're going to leave you with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. Welcome to my wave pool, my wave pool. Welcome to my wave